The Genius Files, Mission Unstoppable, written by Dan Gutman. Welcome back to Genius Files. We're ready for Chapter 7 called The Science of Fire. Fire is an interesting thing. If you pass your finger through a candle flame quickly, it doesn't even hurt. But leave your finger in the flame for 1 short second, and it's a different story. Did you ever look deeply into a flame? The white part is hotter than the yellow part. The yellow part is hotter than the red part, but the hottest part of the flame is the blue part. And that's odd because we often think of blue as the color of cold and red is the color of heat. You do need 3 things to create fire: oxygen, heat, and fuel. Combine them and you get ignition. Take just one of them away and the fire goes out. The science of fire is pretty simple, really. When the average kid comes crashing through a locked door and lands face down in a hallway filled with smoke and flames, he probably isn't going to spend a whole lot of time thinking about the science of fire. But Coke McDonald is not your average kid. "Avoid the blue flames!" Coke shouted as he landed on top of his sister, who in turn had landed on top of the shattered door. "Get off of me!" Pepsi shouted right back. The twins jumped off the hot floor and were faced with a nightmare scenario. There were flames and thick smoke in all directions. The sprinkler system in the hallway ceiling had turned on, but the spray of water was no match for the inferno that was raging around them. Coke and Pepsi grabbed a hold of each other instinctively. There was nothing else to hold on to that wasn't on fire. A lot of paper, toilet paper, paper towels, and art supplies and napkins were all stored in the basement of the school on the shelves that were right next to the detention room. It had ignited fast, and tiny pieces of charred paper were swirling in the air around the frantic twins. But that wasn't all that was burning. There was a noxious, flammable substance that had been poured all over the floor. The fire had been set deliberately. Who would want to burn down a school? Don't answer that question. The sound of the fire engines could be heard in the distance, but that didn't provide Coke and Pepsi with any comfort right now because the heat was intense. Their eyes were tearing up from the smoke and their throats were choking to breathe. There was a nasty chemical smell that filled the hall, and the stuff alone could probably kill you if you inhaled enough of it. Pepsi tried to remember the lesson she had learned when a firefighter had come to school and spoke to them a few years earlier. She recalled that he said something about stop, drop, and roll, but that wouldn't help her now. The floor was on fire. She wasn't about to roll on it. Coke's photographic memory had on file just about everything he had ever experienced, but he had never bothered to notice where the basement fire exits were. Even if he knew where they were, those doors could possibly be locked or intentionally blocked. Coke pulled his t-shirt off over his head. "What? Are you trying to be macho?" Pepsi yelled. "No, I'm trying to stay alive," he replied. He ripped the shirt in half, wrapping one piece around his mouth and nose and handing the other piece to his sister. She made a mask of her own. As Coke looked up to see if the ceiling was about to collapse on him, he realized that the bottom of his left pant leg was on fire. He used his other foot to snuff it out, kicking himself and hurting his ankle in the process. "Ow!" he yelled. "I think I smell carbon monoxide," Pepsi shouted in his ear. "Carbon monoxide is odorless, Einstein," was his reply. "Let's get out of here." "Which way?" she hollered. "I can't see." "It doesn't matter," he shouted back. "You pick. You're the ones with the feelings. Use them." "It's too hot," she shouted. Some burning debris fell off of a shelf and almost hit her. "We can't stay here," Coke told Pepsi. "We'll be burned alive. One way or another, we've got to make a run for it." "Right through the flames?" she asked. Yeah, he replied. Like you're running your finger over a candle. If we move fast enough, we won't even feel a thing. That's crazy, she said. And he knew she was right, too. But staying where they were at would be crazy, too. Where's that fire extinguisher? Coke yelled. Maybe we can clear a path with it. They fumbled around on the floor until Pepsi got her hands on the fire extinguisher. Ow! She screamed. It's too hot to touch. Coke picked up a piece of the door that had broken, and he slapped at the flames with it. This worked to an extent, but the wood was heavy and it quickly zapped his strength. We're going to die in here, Pepsi screamed. And that's when everything went dark. A large wet cloth had landed on top of them, and they couldn't see a thing. Then they felt hands pulling the edge of the cloth around them. It was damp. They then felt themselves being lifted and carried somewhere by somebody. They didn't want to struggle. They wanted to get out of the hallway, and that was exactly what was happening. Somebody had hoisted them up and was carrying them away. The twins felt themselves being pushed through a set of double doors and then outside onto the grass in the playground behind the school. The blanket was pulled off so that they could see their rescuer. It was Mr. Rockford, the school janitor. Bones? Well, I don't mean to be a wet blanket, he told them, but I thought you kids could use one. Coke turned around to see the school enveloped in flames, and firefighters in the distance were spraying water on it. You speak English? Pepsi asked Bones. Of course, he replied. But we thought you were retarded or something, Coke explained. I believe the politically correct term is mentally challenged, Bones said. Now listen, you kids need to get out of town right away. Somebody is trying to kill you. Yeah, I think we kind of figured that out, Coke said. Shouldn't we try to save Mrs. Higgins? Pepsi asked. She might still be in this building somewhere. That wouldn't be a smart idea, Bones told them. Why? Because I think it might have been Mrs. Higgins who set the fire. And that's the end of chapter 7. All right, next time we meet up, we will read chapter 8, which is titled In or Out. Join me next time.